with medicinal plants. I cannot give specific targeted medical advice. That's illegal. I'm not an MD. What I can tell you is the traditional uses and what Western science has found for the medicinal plants. If it sounds like I'm giving you medical advice, that's just a misunderstanding on your part. Please don't get me in jail. Very common landscaping plant. Most of the summer they have these really pretty flowers that come off. Not originally native to here, but they kind of ended up here anyway. Basically, there are two types of Canna lilies. One first started out up in the Seattle, up in the Pacific Northwest, and the other started out in Peru. And if you dig this up, which I'm not going to do, these have big tubers associated with them. If you've ever bought Canna lilies or planted Canna lilies, you find they have these big tubers. Those actually, pound for pound, have about the same amount, if not a little bit more, starch in them than just your regular potato. And luckily these, they're not filled with wood fiber like the greenbrier, so you can actually use these just like potatoes. You dig them up, peel them, boil them, mash them, you're good to go. The one thing I found is they don't hash brown well for some reason. I don't know why, because I love hash browns, but they don't hash brown. The tubers, they're not going to be individual tubers like a potato. It'll be like a tuber with another tuber growing off it, with another tuber growing off it. You're going to have to break it apart, scrub it. I find roasting it first makes the skin come off a lot easier. If you've ever roasted beets, kind of treat it like a beet, where you roast it first and then you just kind of squeeze it and the skin comes off. And at that point, you get like a roasted potato. Peeling them is a little tricky because they got all these nooks and crannies and so forth. So you can peel it, or if you got a kid, age 8 or older that you trust with the knife, just put them to work. Have them peel it and just have at it. But after that, you basically have a potato that you've hidden in your yard as a plant. All over my neighborhood, there used to be stands of this stuff about 2 years after I showed up. It's a really good source of starch. Starch is calories, calories is life. I tell people, if you're worried about the zombies, start Johnny Apple seeding this all over the place, because it's tons of calories. You just use it like a potato. The leaves, when they're fresh and tender, you can use like a banana leaf for wrapping food up to cook. And when, they're going to hate the fact that these harvest plants here. When you get the young shoots like this, you can cook this like asparagus. They're not quite the same. They're kind of like just a bland, neutral sort of flavor, but you can impress your friends and so forth. You put the right sauce on it, everything tastes good. Bacon grease, I bet would be good. Anyway, so you can use this as an asparagus substitute. The other thing, do we have any seeds? Let's see. These hard round seeds about the size of buckshot, and they were actually used as hunting ammunition in some of the early shotguns and stuff, because they were just so extremely hard. They're not as good as lead, they don't fly as far, the mass density, things like that, but in a situation they would actually use the seeds from this. Even in the Civil War, there were several battles where they were low on ammunition, they used the seeds. You can eat the leaves. The leaves aren't that great. They're best when they're small, but like I say, use them as a banana leaf for wrapping food. If you're cooking like banana wrapped fish or chicken or something like that, they make a good thing there. They're really pretty, and if they show up in abandoned lots, no one complains because they're pretty.
I pulled up some tubers a few weeks ago with some other wild greens, and it wasn't bad. It was a little bit more fibrous than a potato, but it was good.
It's good for you. Fiber.
Had like lady's thumb and church cap leaves in there and stuff like that.
Cool.
Wasn't bad.
What about flowers?
No real edible on them, but they're really pretty. So just go, pretty plant with food on it. All right, this is the Burr Clover, and this is all these little birds sticking your shoes and your socks and your dog and all that. The Native Americans would take these at this stage and toast them, and then they just kind of the toasting makes the outer part brittle. Because inside there's a little seed, and that seed is protein. Protein is food, and food is life. So, and you can see there's quite a bit of it. So they would take it, they would toast it, and they would just kind of grind it in their hands, and that would break the husk off the seed. if you've ever heard of winnowing, it's the same thing you do with the wheat. You have that chaff on the wheat, so they need to get it off. So normally they'd just have a bowl of these toasted seeds, and they'd wait for a windy day, not too windy, but medium wind, and just take up a handful and rub it in their hands, and the chaff would break off and the wind would blow it away, but the seeds are denser and they fall back into the pot. So again, this was something that they were desperate for food, so this is something worth doing. And then they would just eat the toasted seeds. They're okay. Again, in my jar of seeds, this is some of the things. There's other things in there. There's a couple of different, like the sand burrs. There's some grasses that make those. You can do that with all of them. And I'm optimist that way. The willow tree and the cottonwood tree, they're actually in the same family. They were the original sources of aspirin. In the bark of the willow tree, there's a chemical that when you consume it and it hits your stomach acid, it gets converted into aspirin. And then, so it has all the fever reduction and the pain relief and things like that. This is a good time of year to collect it. Basically, when the leaves are dropping, that means the branches are as filled with that chemical as they're going to get until next year. So you look for branches about the size of a pencil. You take that and you just shave the bark off, because that's what you want, is the bark. Shave it off, and just when you have a headache or a stomach ache or a fever or something like that, you just chop it up, boil it in water, usually about a tablespoon in 1 cup of boiled water. Boil that for 10 minutes, drink it down, let it cool first, drink it down. It will taste like you just chewed an aspirin. It is not a good flavor. It is aspirin flavored. When it hits your stomach, it actually converts into true aspirin, and you're good to go. Kids under 18 should not take it. It's the whole raised bears syndrome thing. The same reason you aren't supposed to give young kids aspirin. The willow tree aspirin will do the same thing. It's the same chemical, it can cause the same problem. So you want to avoid that. Side note. So I said it converts into aspirin in your stomach. A German company back in the early 1900s figured out how to chemically reproduce the end result, the aspirin molecule, we'll call it that. And it's a very acidic molecule, so they figured if they mixed this buffering agent with it. A buffering is just something that kind of reduces the acidity of a molecule, that you wouldn't get the normal stomach ache. If you just take this stuff, it'll help with the headaches and all that sort of thing, but some people will get a stomach ache from it just because it's so acidic. And so when they buffered the aspirin, they were able to kind of stop that. So that's where you get bufferin from. That's just the buffered aspirin made by the Bayer company, which went on to fund a large part of World War II. So it's just one of those things. The inner bark of the willow tree is edible. So if you peel that outer bark away, there's going to be the cambium layer of the tree. That's the circulatory system of the tree. On a willow tree, it kind of looks like a brown paper bag inside, and you can chop it up and strip it up and boil it and eat it, and it's going to have that same aspirin flavor, but it's also going to have some calories and some vitamin C in it. And calories are life. So it's more of a survival food, especially survival when you get a headache or a muscle ache or something like that. But in doing so, you've taken away the circulatory system of the tree, so you've just killed the tree. So use it only in a last ditch sort of effort. Okay, that's